After the fight with my coworkers, my boss didn't scream at me, didn't call me into his office, didn't even send a passive-aggressive email. He did something worse. He walked past my desk 3 times that morning and looked at the empty chair behind me like I wasn't there. You know that feeling when someone pretends not to see you, and suddenly you become hyper-aware of every breath you take? That was me at 9:07 a.m., staring at the same line of code I'd been staring at for 5 minutes while my own manager talked over my head to the guy 2 desks behind me. "Morning, guys. Busy day. Let's try to keep things smooth after yesterday," he said. After yesterday. That was what they were calling it now. Yesterday. Not the day 3 grown adults ganged up on one coworker in a meeting room and tried to dump their mess on him. Just yesterday. No one said my name. Nobody had to. The tension in the room already knew where to sit. I work in a mid-sized software company. Open space, fake plants, mental health day emails once a quarter, and a ping-pong table no one actually uses. I'm a back-end dev, the boring guy who actually reads documentation and comments his code. I'm also the one who for the last year has been quietly fixing the crashes that my coworkers shipped on Fridays. The 3 stars of this story are Tom, the ideas guy who can talk for 20 minutes about a feature he never writes, Megan, who's great at Slack emojis and delegating, and Jason, who genuinely thinks putting sent from my iPhone under a broken deploy is a personality trait. Yesterday we had a client demo, big one. 6 weeks of work, tons of promises, lots of "don't worry, we'll make it happen" from my team. I'd been the one actually making it happen, staying late, running tests alone in the dark office while the cleaning staff vacuumed around my chair. The demo didn't go great. The API endpoint that Megan said she'd test, it broke. The config change Jason promised to double-check, wrong environment. The quick fix Tom pushed straight to main because we're out of time, introduced a beautiful new bug that crashed the whole thing in front of the client. The call ended with polite smiles and the kind of "we'll follow up" that means we're already talking to your competitor. 2 hours later, I got called into a meeting room. Not we, just me. My boss, Daniel, sat at the head of the table, arms crossed. The other 3 had their laptops open like shields. No one offered me a seat. I took one anyway. The conversation was very professional, which means every sentence was a knife wrapped in corporate throw pillows. "We're concerned about your communication, Alex. You tend to take on too much, and then things fall through the cracks. We need you to be more proactive when you see risks." Translation: "We dropped the ball, but you're the only one who stayed late enough to actually be in the building when it hit the floor. So congratulations, it's your mess now." At some point, they stopped saying "we" and started saying "you" exclusively. You should have flagged the missing tests. You should have stopped Tom's change. You should have created a rollback plan. I remember looking at Daniel and thinking, I did. I literally did all of those. I had the emails, the comments in Jira, the Slack messages with timestamps. I'd been politely waving red flags for 2 weeks. Nobody read them. But sitting in that glass box with 3 pairs of eyes on me, it was clear what they wanted. Not the truth, just an apology. A neat sentence that they could put in their mental file labeled, "Alex messed up, situation handled." I didn't give it to them. "I'm not taking responsibility for decisions I didn't make," I said. The air in the room changed like I'd opened a window in winter. Daniel leaned back. "No one is blaming you for everything," he said, which is exactly what someone says when everyone is blaming you for everything. The meeting ended without a handshake. "We'll revisit this," he added, which is manager speak for, "you're on thin ice until I decide whether you're useful enough to keep." I went home that night, tired, not from the work, but from replaying every sentence in my head, wondering if I should have just swallowed my pride, nodded, and said the magic words, "You're right. I'm sorry. I'll do better." By the time I fell asleep, I'd half convinced myself to apologize in the morning. Not because I was wrong, but because peace is cheaper than being right. Then morning came. I walked into the office at 8:42. Same humming of AC, same smell of burnt coffee, same low buzz of keyboards and half-awake chatter. Only difference was I felt like I'd stepped onto a stage where everyone else knew their lines, and I didn't. Megan was at the coffee machine with Tom, laughing too loud at something on his phone. They saw me, went quiet for a fraction of a second, then turned their shoulders just enough to make it clear I wasn't invited into whatever version of events they were sharing. Jason walked past my desk and did the thing where you pretend to be engrossed in your phone so you don't have to accidentally make eye contact. I opened my laptop, checked my emails. 2 new messages from Daniel. One was a generic all-hands reminder about owning our mistakes and learning from failure. The other was sent to the whole team except me. I only saw it because he'd accidentally forwarded it to the wrong distribution list later. At that moment, I didn't know it existed. All I had was the silence. No good morning, no can we talk for a minute. Nothing. He walked by my desk once carrying his mug, again on the way back from the printer, and a third time when he went to Megan's desk and started discussing new ways of distributing responsibilities 2 meters away from me, never once looking in my direction. You'd be amazed how loud deliberate silence can be. Around 10, Tom spun his chair toward me like we were still buddies. "Hey man, look, everyone was pretty heated yesterday," he started. "Daniel's expecting you to, clear the air." "Clear the air," I repeated. "Yeah, just own your part. Say you got overwhelmed. Didn't flag things early enough. You know how he is. He just needs to hear it." So that was the script. I was supposed to walk into Daniel's office, apologize for not stopping them from ignoring me, and thank him for the opportunity to be their scapegoat. I looked at Tom. He was already half turned back to his screen, like the conversation was a formality. Of course I'd comply. That's what I do. I fix things. For the rest of the morning, my brain ran in circles. Walk in, say sorry, keep your job, keep the peace. Don't walk in and you're difficult. Not a team player, hard to manage. At lunch, I sat alone at the small round table near the window. My usual crew filled the long table on the other side of the room. I heard my name once, followed by a chorus of shh. My phone buzzed. A Slack message from Daniel, short and surgical. "Let me know when you're ready to talk." Not if. When. I stared at that sentence for a long time. It wasn't an invitation, it was a test. A command disguised as a choice. "Are you going?" one of the junior devs asked quietly as he passed by with his tray. He'd heard the rumors, too. Everyone had. "I don't know yet," I said. But the truth was forming, slow and precise, somewhere under the noise of fear and habit. Because the more I replayed the last few weeks, the clearer it became. The late nights, the ignored warnings, the way my name magically appeared in every issue summary document for problems I hadn't created. I wasn't just part of the system. I was the cushion it landed on every time it fell. By 2 p.m., my heart rate had gone down, my hands had stopped shaking, and an idea that had felt terrifying at 9 a.m. now felt clean. If my boss wanted to ignore me, fine. If my coworkers wanted me to apologize for their mess, fine. They'd forgotten one small thing. I was the one who kept receipts. You don't notice patterns while you're living inside them. Only when you step back, even half a step, do they snap into focus. By the next morning, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Tom suddenly needed a second pair of eyes on a ticket he'd ignored for 4 days. Megan forwarded me a client question with, "Can you handle this? You're better with technical stuff." Jason dropped a broken test suite into my lap with, "You're the only one who understands this mess anyway." Before the meeting room ambush, they used to pretend their requests were favors. Now they didn't bother pretending. And Daniel? He wasn't just ignoring me anymore. He was rearranging responsibilities, quietly, in ways that pushed every high-risk task toward my desk. At 10:19 a.m., he posted a new workflow chart in Slack. Everyone reacted with thumbs-ups and check marks. Everyone except me. Because in the chart, every critical path went through my name. Every final review step, every sign-off, every stability verification. If anything broke now, it wouldn't just look like my fault. It would be my fault, by design. That was the moment irritation switched to something cleaner. Recognition. They weren't waiting for me to apologize. They were counting on it. They needed the record to match the narrative. I stared at the chart for a long minute, then clicked it closed, and when I did, I felt the first shift inside me. The small, sharp click of something locking into place. Not anger, not revenge, structure. That's when the day truly began. Around noon, Tom swaggered over to my desk, holding his laptop like a waiter holding a tray. "Hey man, quick thing," he said. "Client found another issue in the payment module. Nothing major. Can you take a look real quick?" I took a slow breath. "I didn't work on the payment module," I said. "Yeah, but you're the one who understands the back-end logic best," he replied, scratching the back of his neck like he was embarrassed for me. "So if you could just—" "No," I said, calm and clean. "Send it to the person who wrote it." That was the first micro-catharsis. Tom blinked like the word no wasn't in his mental dictionary. "Dude, it's not a big ask. We're all trying to get back on Daniel's good side after—" "Yes?" He stopped himself, but the sentence was already out there, souring the air. "You mean your good side," I corrected. "Not mine." Tom shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Come on, man, don't be like that." "Then don't treat me like the team trash can," I replied. This time he didn't have a comeback. He walked away, typing something angrily on his laptop. I knew exactly what channel he was typing into. I didn't bother checking it. They'd talk. Let them. What I didn't expect was Megan approaching me after lunch. She came over with her coffee, leaning on my desk like we were about to gossip. "Hey, Alex," she said lightly. "So, yesterday was kinda messy. I think it would help everyone if you clarified your part." "My part," I repeated. "You know what I mean," she said, her smile fixed in place. "Just acknowledge where things went off track. People would feel better." "People or you?" I asked. Her expression flickered, only for a second, but it was enough. "Look," she said, exhaling, "Daniel's under pressure. He needs to show higher management that we understand what went wrong." "So he wants someone to blame," I said. "That's not fair," she snapped, then softened her voice. "Nobody blames you for everything, just the communication issues." Communication issues. That phrase again. "It's interesting," I said slowly. "Because I communicated everything. I have timestamps, emails, tickets." Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "You kept all that?" she asked. I shrugged. "I document things. It's my job." She didn't like that answer. She didn't like it at all. "Alex, you're making this harder than it needs to—" "I'm not responsible for your comfort," I said quietly. Another microcatharsis, sharper, deeper. Her lips tightened and she walked away. But that was just the beginning. At 3:40 p.m., Jason approached me with an energy drink and an overconfident stride that made him look like he was about to pitch a startup idea. "So hey," he began, "I talked to Daniel. He's giving you space, man. He thinks you're overwhelmed. You should go talk to him." "Why?" I asked. Jason blinked, caught off guard. Because that's how teams work?" "Is that how it worked when you pushed straight to Maine without review?" I asked. He looked away. "Different situation," he muttered. "No," I said. "Just a different scapegoat." A flush crept up his neck. "Dude, you're being dramatic." "Dramatic as a meeting room ambush," I replied. "This is clarity." He scoffed and walked off, shaking his head like I was the problem. Which was fine. Let him think that. Thinking is free. At 4:12 p.m., Daniel finally messaged me privately. "Please come to my office so we can resolve this." Resolve this. Not talk. Not review. Resolve, meaning fold, concede, apologize. I stared at the message. Earlier, it might have worked. But the problem was simple. I wasn't in the same story as yesterday, and I wasn't playing the same role. I typed a single line back. "I'm available at 5. Put your questions in writing before then." He didn't reply, not in text anyway. 60 seconds later, his office door shut a little too hard, and for the first time all week, I felt something close to relief, because I finally understood the real truth in all of this. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing the version of me who kept everything running quietly, the version who stayed late, the version who absorbed blame, the version who apologized on cue. That version was gone. And when I realized that, the room around me felt different, like someone had turned on a fan in a stale room. They thought I would break. They thought I would bend. They thought I would come crawling into Daniel's office to ask for forgiveness I didn't owe. They thought I was done. I wasn't. I used to think retaliation was loud, explosive, the kind of thing people gossip about near the office printers. Turns out, real retaliation, the kind that actually works, is quiet, measured, boring even. It starts with a folder, not dramatic, not cinematic, just a folder on my desktop labeled Archive. Inside that folder, every warning I'd sent, every ticket I'd flagged, every Slack message where I said, "This needs review," and got an emoji instead of actual work, every Jira comment with timestamps, every version control log showing exactly who broke what and when. For months, I'd been documenting everything because I thought that's what responsible people do. I never expected any of it to matter. But at 8:03 a.m. that morning, it became a weapon. Not out of revenge, out of self-preservation, or maybe both. Hard to tell the difference when you've been pushed long enough. The first real crack in their confidence appeared in the daily stand-up. Everyone kept glancing at me. The kind of glances people give a ticking device they hope won't explode. Megan spoke quickly, like speed could cover guilt. Jason kept checking his phone. Tom kept clearing his throat. Daniel avoided looking at me altogether. "Any blockers?" he asked the group. Silence. Then I said calmly, "I'd like to discuss responsibility distribution on the payment module issue. I have documentation showing—" "We'll handle that separately," Daniel snapped, sharp enough that every head lifted. There it was. Fear. A thin, metallic note in his voice. He dismissed the meeting early after that. And just like that, the office had a pulse again. Quick, nervous, almost frantic. Because they finally realized I wasn't hiding. I wasn't defeated. I wasn't apologizing. I was preparing. At 11:17 a.m., I made the move I'd been considering all morning. I opened a new email, not to Daniel, not to the team, to internal compliance and HR governance. Subject line: Request for review. Pattern of misattributed responsibility and procedural negligence. I attached the folder. All of it. Screenshots, timestamps, side-by-side comparisons. The meeting room calendar invite that included everyone except me. The Slack thread where Megan wrote, "Alex will fix it, he always does." Jason's push logs. Tom's unreviewed commits. And 8 months of ignored warning breadcrumbs tied with a neat digital bow. I ended the email with, "For transparency, I am not making accusations. I am requesting an evaluation of documented work distribution, leadership conduct, and discrepancy between responsibility and authority." Then I hesitated, not because I doubted what I was doing, but because once I pressed send, there was no walking it back. Daniel couldn't talk it out. The team couldn't pretend it wasn't that serious. No one could rewrite the narrative to make me the unstable one. The email would freeze the truth, in writing, in the company record. I exhaled slowly and pressed send. A micro-catharsis, clean and quiet. No anger, just release. The email landed harder than I expected. I knew because 30 seconds later, Daniel walked out of his office like he'd been pushed from behind. He looked around the room, eyes skimming over every monitor, looking for me. I didn't look back. He disappeared again, closing the door, gently this time, but not gently enough to hide the tension in his shoulders. 5 minutes later, Megan checked her Slack. Her face dropped. Jason saw the same notification a moment later, his neck blotched red. Tom spun in his chair and slowly rolled away from his desk, like distance could save him. HR had already begun the process. I didn't need to check my inbox. I knew the review had started because the office changed temperature. Not literally, but socially. Conversations got quieter. People typed slower. Even the AC hum felt cautious. It's strange how quickly guilt makes people loud in their silence. At 2:04 p.m., HR called me. "Hi, Alex. We received your documentation. Thank you for bringing this forward. We'll need to ask you a few follow-up questions." "Of course," I said. My voice was steady in a way it hadn't been for weeks. We scheduled the meeting for the next morning. It wasn't an ambush. It wasn't a trap. It was procedure. And procedure was on my side. When the call ended, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for a second. Not to celebrate, just to breathe. Because the truth was simple. I hadn't destroyed anything. I hadn't lied or exaggerated. All I'd done was remove the shield I'd been providing them. And the collapse that followed, that was their architecture, not mine. At 3:11 p.m., I got a Slack message from Jason. "WTF did you do?" I ignored it. 20 seconds later, another one from Megan. "Alex, can we please talk before things get out of hand?" Ignored. Then Tom. "Dude, this is gonna blow up the whole team." Yes, Tom, exactly. I muted all three. The panic rolling through their messages wasn't my responsibility. Not anymore. At 4:50 p.m., as I was packing up, Daniel finally emerged. He walked straight toward my desk. No smile. No attempt at friendliness. "Alex, my office. Now." I looked at him, calm as a still lake. "No," I said. The room inhaled. Daniel blinked, stunned. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no. If you have questions, put them in writing. That's the process now." His jaw tightened. "You blindsided this team." "I documented the truth," I said. "If the truth blindsided you, that's not my fault." For the first time, he didn't have a response. He stepped back, searching for something to say, but whatever he found wasn't enough. I grabbed my bag, turned off my monitor, and headed toward the exit. Behind me, the entire office watched in perfect silence. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. They thought I'd fired the final shot. They didn't understand I'd only lit the fuse. They thought I was done. I wasn't. There's a strange calm that hits the moment you hand your side of the story to people whose job is to read it. Not your boss, not your coworkers, not the people who've already chosen the version of reality that comforts them. Actual impartial eyes. The next morning, I walked into the office with the kind of steady heartbeat you only get after a long night of clarity. No rehearsed speeches, no prepared arguments, just the truth, already written down, already submitted. HR met with me first. The woman running the interview, Claudia, had the practiced neutrality of someone who's heard every possible office disaster. But there was something else in her expression, too. Interest. The real kind. The kind managers only pretend to have. "Thank you for the documentation," she said, pulling up the folder I'd sent. "It's thorough." It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't criticism. It was an acknowledgement. We went through every item, slowly, carefully. "When did you first raise this concern? Why was this test assigned to you? Why did the team tag you as responsible here when you weren't involved? What was your manager's response?" For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was explaining myself. I felt like I was clarifying facts. Every timestamp had weight. Every ignored warning left a mark. Every Slack message painted another inch of the picture. They weren't interrogating me. They were investigating the situation. And for the first time, the situation wasn't bent against me. They asked me how I felt working under Daniel. I told them the truth. I don't mind hard work. I mind being held responsible for other people's choices. Claudia typed that sentence out word for word. When the meeting ended, she closed her laptop gently. "We'll follow up soon," she said. I walked out of the room not lighter, but aligned. That was the only way to describe it. Everything that followed felt inevitable. Word spread fast, not because I said anything, I didn't. Because Daniel had a meeting with HR next, and then Tom, and then Megan, and then Jason. One by one, they got called into the same conference room. One by one, they came out looking smaller, not humiliated, not destroyed, just finally seen for what they contributed, and what they didn't. By lunch, the whispers had reached every corner of the office. Compliance is involved. Someone reported Daniel. No, it's about the demo. No, it's about the whole year. Dude, I heard the documentation was insane. They didn't know it was me. Not officially, but everyone knew. And strangely, no one looked at me with judgment. Just recognition. It's funny how people can sense when a tide has already turned. At 3 p.m., Daniel called an emergency team sync. He didn't look like himself. His shirt wasn't fully tucked in. His hair wasn't as polished. His voice didn't have that smug edge he usually saved for situations where he thought he held all the cards. Going forward, he began, there will be a temporary reassignment of responsibilities. Leadership has requested that tasks be evenly redistributed until further notice. Evenly redistributed. The words landed heavy. Tom stared at the table. Megan's jaw flexed. Jason tapped his pen like he wanted to puncture the wood. And, Daniel continued, swallowing, code review will be mandatory for all commits. No exceptions. All three of them flinched. I didn't. Because mandatory review meant their shortcuts would finally cost them something. And lastly, Daniel added, voice tight, all communication will need to be documented. Every task, every update, every decision. No more verbal agreements. This time the flinch was universal. Except me. Because that policy was built for people like me. For people who already did the quiet, invisible labor. For people who were done carrying the weight for everyone else. The meeting ended with no questions. They didn't dare ask them. The next day, Daniel wasn't in his office. By noon, an email went out. Effective immediately, Daniel Rhodes will no longer be serving as engineering manager. Interim leadership will be assigned shortly. The office went silent. Not shocked. Just stunned in the way you are when something everyone knew was wrong finally becomes undeniable. A few desks away, Tom sank into his chair like the air had left his lungs. Megan stared at the screen, unblinking. Jason stood up, walked to the kitchen, and stayed there a long time. No one came to my desk. No one asked if I was the reason. They didn't have to. The truth was threaded around the room like electric wire. No point touching it. It would only hurt. At 3:30 p.m., I got another email. Short, clean, unemotional. Alex, until a permanent replacement is assigned, we'd like you to serve as acting team lead. Your documentation practices and reliability make you the ideal fit during this transition. If you're willing, please confirm by end of day. I stared at that message for a long moment, not because I doubted it, but because of the contrast. Yesterday, they pretended I was the problem. Today, they asked me to lead. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. I just felt steady. I typed back, I'm willing, and that was it. No speech, no victory lap, no emotional monologue, just a sentence that fit in the space where my anger used to live. When the day ended, I left the office last. Not because I had to, because I wanted the quiet. I walked past Daniel's empty office, past the desks of people who had underestimated how patient I could be, past the glass meeting room where I'd once been cornered. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't, not anymore. Outside, the sun was low, brushing the parking lot with a soft orange glow. I breathed in the cold air, hands in my pockets, feeling something unfamiliar. Space. Not freedom, not victory. Space. The kind you finally get back after someone stops standing on your chest. When I sat in my car, the seat felt like mine again. My job felt like mine again. My time felt like mine again. Peace isn't dramatic. It's just finally earned. They thought they could break me. They thought I would fold. They thought I would stay quiet forever. They thought I was done. I wasn't.